The following is an exclusive presentation of WI Garden Media, the voice of Garden Talk Radio.
Coming up on the program today, we're going to talk about growing great tomatoes as well as spring soil prep. Our guest is author and radio garden host Doug Oster, and we'll answer your garden questions. The hour is full, so join us.
You are listening to the most informationally packed hour of garden-focused radio in the country and on the internet with your host, husband and wife team Joey and Holly Baird. This is the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
And welcome to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. I am your host, Joey Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
This program is for you to help your garden grow better, to maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make your grass look greener, as well as preserving what you grow. We thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening to us on one of the 20 AM and FM frequencies broadcasting our program in 2023, through a radio app, through our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, underneath the Season 7 tab at the top of the page, in-studio video replay or podcast download replay. We thank you for that. You want to be part of the program, you can do that by sending us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Or you can give us a call, toll-free, coast to coast, at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469. Well, Holly, as the spring warms up, sooner or than later, we will be planting tomatoes outside. And there's some things in which one can do in order to help make their tomatoes grow better.
Absolutely. Tomato planting time will be here sooner than we know it for many of us. So you want to think about where you're going to get your tomato seeds or starts from. So maybe you started your own seeds. Maybe you ran out of time. Maybe your seeds didn't take off like you thought they would. You can go to your local garden center and you can buy your starts and you can grow them. We suggest going to a local garden center because they will have usually a better variety than a big box store, and then they'll have people there to answer questions for you.
And you can plant them, the seed, directly in the ground. You don't need to transplant anything.
No. Growing up, that's what we did. We just put them directly in the ground.
So, but if you do choose to start them and people choose to start tomato plants in order to allow them to have a healthy plant start, and then once they put it in the ground, if it is a 90-day variety till fruit, then the clock starts once you put that transplant in the ground, not when you started it in seed pod or seed tray inside.
Right.
So you want to plant it deep.
Yeah. So you want to plant it up to the 3 inches?
3/4 of the plant underground.
And you want to look at a few things, whether it be your soil. Well, you want your soil temperature and then the long range temperature forecast. So your first 70-degree day, you don't want to just get out there and start planting tomatoes. You want to look at what's going to happen within the next week or so, and then also think about the soil, the actual where you're putting the tomatoes in the ground in the soil.
So, 6 to 8 weeks before your last average frost date, it's recommended to start seeds indoors. And then when the time is correct in your area, that's when the long-range forecast shows no more signs of frost, and the soil temperature at root zone is at minimum 50 degrees Fahrenheit at root zone, that meaning about 4 inches deep. Then it's time to plant your tomatoes after you've hardened them off. That's a whole nother process for another conversation. So you want to plant them deep, and when you plant them deep, you want to take and remove all the limbs off the stalk up 3/4 of the way up the plant and leaving the top canopy above the soil. The reason why we plant them deep is...
Well, one is because tomatoes are part of the nightshade family, and if you look at a tomato plant, you'll see these little hairs poking off, and each of those hairs could be potential roots. So when you plant them deep, then those little hairs will grow or become roots, and then those will root the soil and will feed the plant. So that's one thing you want to do. Now, you may think trimming those bottom leaves off might make your plant look a little sad, and yes, but it'll catch up quickly, it'll grow. And there's some beneficial aspects of doing that. And one of them is if you've ever experienced early blight, it is very, very disappointing and sad. And this will help you prevent that.
So you plant the plant deep, and as it grows, you remove the lower limbs in order to keep an air circulation and prevent splash up of the soil that contains early blight. And another way to reduce early blight, in addition to the cutting of the leaves, and is to apply whole grain yellow cornmeal.
Right. So there's this bacteria that lives in your soil. There's good bacteria and all sorts of things in your soil, but the bad bacteria that causes early blight is in there. And early blight happens because the soil splashes up on the leaves of your plants. So what you do is you take whole grain yellow cornmeal, and you, at the time of planting, after you've planted your tomato, you just take a handful and sprinkle it around the base of the plant. And it has a beneficial fungi in it called trichoderma. And trichoderma just exists in whole grain yellow cornmeal. So when I say whole grain, you may have to go, when you go to the store, look for at the more organic brands. It's typically not going to be in like the store brand. You have to buy the actual brand name. And that will help stop that early blight. You just do that once when you plant them, and then about halfway through the season. And then the next step is to mulch.
Mulching, whether you use chemical-free, seed-free grass clippings, straw, leaves, shredded paper, something to create a barrier between the soil and the leaves, which, one, holds the moisture in the ground as well as reduces weeds, but also prevents that soil splashing up. So in addition to the whole grain yellow cornmeal, the mulch also helps prevent early blight on your tomatoes. I want to go back and we talk about the things we put in the hole at the time of planting, because everybody, Holly, has their own formulation of what they put in that hole. It can be very complicated or it can be very simple.
Right. And some people do have things that their grandparents did and their parents did and blah, blah, blah. Or maybe you have no clue and you're just doing what your neighbor told you to do and you're not really sure why. We just use an all-purpose organic fertilizer, like a 10-10-10 or within that range. Don't hurt yourself going to the store and looking for an exact 10-10-10. Sometimes it might be like an 8-10-4 or something, but just an all-purpose organic fertilizer. Anything more than a 10-10, you're going to waste money on, because there's not enough time in your growing season for the plant to absorb all the nutrients that fertilizer provides. So keep it under a 10-10-10, 4-6-8, or 4, whatever it is. Organic is best, so that the plant doesn't become dependent, and it can use what it needs at the time that it needs it. Now, all of that said and done, we need to support our plants. We need to support our tomato plants. We need to emotionally support them?
Well, you can emotionally support your tomato plants if you choose
Maybe
to.
your tomato plants emotionally support you.
Right. But we need something structurally supporting of our tomato plants so they don't lie in the ground. If you do not support your tomato plants, you will lose 50% of the fruit that plant produces.
Right. And yeah, you want to, whether you use a cage, a proper tomato cage, or you use something else, whether it be, some people use like those rose cages. Some people just take sticks and use old torn up towels and bed sheets and linens, what have you. We use what's called the Florida weave method, and it works well for us. We have used cages in the past too. There's nothing wrong with that. We even took some old wire netting, what do you call that?
Rubber-coated fencing.
Rubber-coated fencing, and made cages ourselves. So there's a lot of options, but the Florida weave, and we have this on our YouTube channel,
which you can go to our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, type in the search engine Florida weave or tomatoes, and we can, it's very in-depth, multiple videos about that.
Right, and how to grow the best tomatoes is there as well. So the Florida weave, you just take about a 6 to 8 foot
yes.
pole or
T-post.
T-post, yep. And you put that at the end of each row on both sides, so on both sides of each row. And then you take your twine and at about every foot from the base of the plant, you string it across 2 strings next to each other. And then what will happen is you can guide the tomato through those strings, and you do them about foot increments until you get to the top, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that way it'll support the tomato as it's growing.
Yeah, the tomato hangs on that string to allow the support. And because you're not using cages, you can actually get the tomatoes, a few more tomatoes in that row, because sometimes if you can plant tomatoes tighter than what is recommended, but the cages prevent you from getting any closer. But with the Florida weave, you have the availability to expand a little bit. You can do single stem. You can let them grow naturally for determinate or indeterminate tomatoes. Works very well. That's a lot of information in a very short time. Again, you can go to our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and type in tomatoes in the search engine, and multiple videos will come up with an in-depth visualization of how we do this and are successful. The whole grain cornmeal came from a master gardener in Texas, Bob Webster, who's a radio host and an author, and it's been phenomenal ever since we have tried it. We've done it, and we've told people to do it, and they come back a year later going, we thought you were crazy, but we've had the best tomatoes you ever had. So the yellow whole grain cornmeal for preventing early blight works very well. What also works very well, Holly, is what Walton's Incorporated has for all of us.
Yeah, we brought to you today by our sponsor, Walton's Inc. We know you care about where your food comes from. Walton's Inc. has everything you need to go from the equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. If you want snack sticks that people will actually like and want to eat, you can go to meatjuststicks.com to help. It's a website to help educate people on the hows and whys of meat processing, as well as a community of almost 15,000 users who will give their opinion and guidance on meat processing issues. If you go to waltonsinc.com, you can find everything you need from meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers to help you go from animal to edible. Walton's everything but the meat. Use code GROW50 to save 10% off of orders of $50 or more at waltonsinc.com.
Stay with us. When we come back, it's going to be about prepping your soil for spring. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now, 1-800-927-SHOW.
Grip 6 produces American-made products with sleek designs and quality materials. Based and manufactured in Utah, they have high quality and durable products to last a lifetime. They are built beyond tough. The wallets are low profile, made out of high quality aluminum, and options to upgrade. Access your cards and cash without bulk. Guaranteed to last a lifetime. It's the last wallet you'll ever need. Your traditional wallet is big and bulky and not easy to access the cards you need conveniently. Grip 6 has a quick array access for your cards. You can also add money bands for cash, more cards, business cards, and more. Variable capacity for minimalists or maximalists. Lightweight, sleek, and no wallet bulk in your pocket while gardening, working outside, or enjoying the great outdoors. Designed and manufactured in-house for best results and quality every time. When you purchase from Grip 6, you're supporting long life cycle products and American-made manufacturing. Check out their belts, wallets, and socks at grip6.com. Use code RADIO15 to save 15% off at grip6.com.
Dripping Springs Oyas clay pot irrigation solves the watering needs for gardens, bushes, new trees, and more. An ancient irrigation system we brought to America. Dripping Springs Oyas, OLLAS, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Check us out.
Jung Seed Company is a family-owned and operated gardening company since 1907 with the largest selection of seeds and plants online. Use coupon code 10TG23 to receive 10% off your order at jungseeds.com. Again, that coupon code is 10TG23. Tree Hugger sprinklers are the ultimate watering device for either your newly planted or established trees and shrubs. Our sprinklers open and close around the trunk of your tree and provide 360 degrees of watering. With our adjustable valve, you can direct the water to your tree's targeted saturation zone. They come in 3 sizes, 7, 11, and 15 inches. You can purchase a Tree Hugger sprinkler at your local garden center, feed store, or hardware store. Go to treehuggersprinklers.com to find a retailer close to you. Or you can buy it directly from Amazon or treehuggersprinklers.com. If you're an independent nursery, garden center, hardware store, or feed store, you will want to stock this product. Contact the good people at Tree Hugger Sprinklers and they will get you set up. Your tree's best friend. treehuggersprinklers.com.
Wind River Chimes creates a symphony in any space. Chimes that are inspired by nature and designed to make the natural world even more inspiring. Music speaks to everyone. Individually handcrafted in Virginia for over 35 years and hand-tuned for an exceptional precision and lasting beauty. Because in life, the winds of change are always moving. But no matter where they carry you, Wind River chimes will always be the inspiring harmony. With a large selection and customization options, you will find the sound that soothes you. Visit windriverchimes.com to shop and find out more. Dig planting holes from a comfortable standing position. Step, twist, pull, and plant. Visit ProPlugger.com.
Rootmaker starts your plants off right and keeps them going through harvest. From their seed starting trays with an innovative design that air prunes the roots to their large variety of grow bags, 1 to 60 gallons, their products will provide you the harvest you've never seen before. Visit rootmaker.com and use coupon code RADIO23 to save 15% off your order at rootmaker.com.
Overwatering is the top reason why houseplants are dying. Tree Diaper solves this problem by absorbing excess water up from the soil. It will store water and use it when the soil dries. Use Garden 15 to save 15% at treediaper.com.
The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Dripworks, Rise Gardens, Grip 6, Bloomin' Easy, Fleet Farm, Waltons Incorporated, Blue Ribbon Organics, Tree Diaper. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy you're with us today. Farm Defense, Holly.
Farm and garden in the ultimate comfort. Farmer's Defense has a lightweight, durable sleeves made to protect you against the elements while farming. Farmer's sleeves offer unparalleled protection of arms and skin for any farmer, gardener, or outdoor worker. Say goodbye to irritated skins and sunburns in the garden. Their sleeves are cooling, and they offer comfort and protection against the elements outdoors. It's an alternative to thick clothing. Farmer's Defense is made of wicking material with UBF protection factor 50+ to protect your arms from allergens and scratches. To find all their great products, you can visit farmersdefense.com.
We got ours. So, spring soil prep, Holly. Some people who are new to gardening may not know exactly when or what or how to prepare their soil for spring, and they may make the mistakes because they just don't know any better. So we're going to go over some of these tips in which you can better your garden by following them.
Yeah, so I think the first one is not to start too early, in the sense that if it's muddy and you're like, well, normally around this time is when I start my garden,
right,
so I'm just going to go at it.
This is not a farm. You don't have 5,000 acres to get in the ground. You don't have to mud it in.
Right, and I feel like we've had even muddier springs than, I don't know, normal 5 years ago. And sometimes you just have to wait. And I know that's frustrating. You're like, I want to get out there. Then find some other yard duty to do.
Grow in containers.
What
is the reason why we don't want to mud it in? What happens if we try to mud it in?
So first of all, you're really disturbing a lot of the ecosystem of the soil when you are trying to mud it in. And second of all, a lot of those seeds that you plant are going to rot anyway. Yeah,
it could be too cold and the seeds are not going to germinate. So you want to, with the proper time for soil disturbance, if you are going to use a mantis tiller and till the soil or disturb the soil, is when you can take the soil and put it in your hand, create a ball of soil and touch it with a finger, your other hand, and it'll break apart. It'll break apart there's a little amount of moisture in there. It's not too dry. It's not too wet. It breaks apart. It's very pliable in your hand. That's the time in which you are okay to work the soil. Now, you might want to do that in several areas of your garden, as you might have different densities of soil in your garden, as we do. And in the big ag industry, there are certain areas of a field that is much more workable than other areas, low-lying versus high areas. And that's why in the spring, you'll see a field partially tilled and big areas left alone because the tractor and the implement cannot make it through there, and they're just going to cause more problems than benefit by tilling the soil up. So keep that in mind. Don't be eager. Be smart about what you're going to do with your soil so your garden can produce. Because if you do work the soil, Holly, when it's wet, you're going to create clods and you're going to have big, giant bricks of dirt that you can't break apart, and stuff doesn't grow too well in big bricks of dirt.
I would say not. So then you also want to add organic matter or compost. A lot of times, especially if maybe you have clay soil or sandy soil, this is beneficial for that. If you just want to feed your soil in an organic way, that's a good a good thing to do if you're not sure how much or what or whatever you're supposed to add. You can get a soil test, and you can get a soil test from Soil Savvy, and they have a complete breakdown of what's going on in your soil.
And they will tell you recommendations on how to fix this or fix that. They have multiple points of analyzation at soilsavvy.com, and you can get all kinds of NPK and calcium, magnesium, sulfate, zinc, all these different types of elements, the pH level, to allow you to know where you're at, because you can't just look at your garden and go, hey, that soil is this pH and I'm this low on nitrogen, I'm this high on potassium. Now, if you're growing, there are certain telltale signs that a plant will display that indicates there's something wrong. But yeah, if a plant is yellowing, there is a lack of nitrogen in the soil, but that doesn't tell you that you're 3% low or 10% low. So a soil test is a smart investment in order to know exactly what you need to do in order to correct the problem in which you're facing in your soil. Because if you're just guessing, you're guessing wrong and buying more of something or not buying enough of the other thing and actually damaging more of the soil and taking longer to fix it once you do get a soil test. So that's soilsavvy.com is where you can get that soil test at.
Yeah, lots of good soil tips there. Another one is to leave the roots. So if you have...
What do you mean, leave the roots?
Leave the roots.
We're not talking about weeds. We're talking about...
We're talking about, say you didn't pull your tomato plants out last fall or whatever, just leave them in there. You can even just knock them down. They're just going to add organic matter to your soil.
Corn stalks.
Yeah, corn stalks, etc. Whatever you got. Unless the plant was diseased... diseased.
I'm thinking powdery mildew on squashes or pumpkins.
Yeah, something like that, or even just like a blight situation. You want to, or that one rusty bean rust. Yeah, so unless the plant was diseased, you can just go ahead and knock it down. It'll break down pretty quickly, and then that will just feed your soil a bit more.
And it will also open up cavities in the soil for moisture to penetrate down and get more water into that upper layer of the soil.
And the worms will like it.
Yeah, the worms will help break down that as well based on, how many worms you have and that organic matter. And, that's the same type of concept that in agriculture, they use implements that have long teeth in order to cut deep into the fields to open up pockets to let spring rainwater to get in to raise that water table to get that soil moist and allow it to hold and wick back up as the summer months, the heat kicks in. So leave the roots. Now, spreading manure. If you have the availability, there's certain animal byproducts in which you can use right off the animal. You don't have to wait for it to age. We've talked about this on the program a number of times. Horse manure, cow manure, pig manure, those type of things have to be aged. There's a number of other ones that have to be aged. But also, knowing the source, Holly, can save your garden. Just save your garden.
Right. So as things evolve here in our world, a lot of farmers, etc., use aggressive herbicides.
I don't think it's their fault.
It's not their fault. No, it's not their fault. It's like a broadleaf herbicide.
Yes.
And what does a broadleaf herbicide do?
It kills everything except for grasses. Your thistles, your lamb's quarter, your dandelions, anything, your bordocks, anything that's not a grass, it is designed to absorb into the plant and kill it. So the field or the pasture is pure grass, which is ideal fodder or feed for cows and horses.
Right. So your neighbor or your neighbor's neighbor, Jimmy John down the road is like, hey, I got this aged horse manure, and I know it's free. I know you're a gardener, and it's really great for gardening. All my gardener friends just have enjoyed it, blah blah blah, or whatever. But maybe Farmer Jimmy John switched to one of these aggressive herbicides,
not
knowing because that's not his concern.
Right, because what he was using before wasn't working because in some levels, the weeds became super weeds and became resistant to the chemicals in which was being applied. So they have to up it to a more powerful weed.
Right.
A weed spray.
Weed spray, yeah. So then now it's one of the brands is, or whatever is called Grazon.
Okay.
Grazon. But what happens is that it's so persistent that the horse will digest it. The horse will have their waste. That waste will age. How long do you...
6 months.
6 months. For 6 months. And then you apply it to your plants, and then it kills your plants. Now, it doesn't kill all of them. It's usually like the broadleafish
Peppers,
plants.
tomatoes, eggplants, beans, potatoes, those type of things.
Yeah. The ones that, you want.
The ones that
you probably grow your garden for the most.
Yeah.
And then they'll be stunted and funny. So if you do accept horse manure from somebody
or cow,
you want to find out what are they spraying their pasture with. And if they don't know, they're not sure, you can always, if they're like, I use this brand or whatever, do your research. A lot of times you email the company, you can find out what's going on, whatever. So just be cautious, be careful. We are entering, or we have been, in a very chemical laden world, and don't blame the farmer. They're just doing what they need to do to feed their animals.
And most times they don't have a choice. They're in a situation where the chemical companies have said, here, use our product. We'll basically give it to you, but you have to agree in order to use it, and all these agreements and contracts. And whenever, and some of these chemicals are expensive, or it's the only thing that works for what they have to need it for. They have to do a certain job, and that's the only thing that they are, because organic is not an option for them.
Right. And all of us have jobs, and some of us have to just do our jobs. And
you're late. Well, I got here as soon as I wanted to.
You got to stop for your iced coffee on your way to work.
Well, if you don't have the option or choose not to do manure, you can save the leaves in the fall. You might still have leaves on the ground if you are a fortunate procrastinator and didn't clean the leaves up. You may still have a lot available for you to use as a mulch, whether you grind it up through a leaf mulch or vacuum it up or mulch it up through the lawnmower in a bagger, and you can utilize that as a mulch, and it will feed the soil. Now it'll break down. It'll break down within 2 months and feed the soil and dissipate, and it'll go in the soil, but it's a great alternative to other options, and a safe one, because it is a plant based on your own property that you are using for the benefit of your garden. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, soon, Holly, it's kind of warming up in some parts of the country, and soon it'll be warm at many places, and we want to enjoy your yard without sharing it with those beetles and grubs.
Yeah, with spring just around the corner, it's time to start thinking about controlling the beetles, grubs. There's, don't forget the Japanese beetles. They're really not that far away.
Grub Gone can be applied directly to the turf or garden around ornamentals to control grubs and lessen the impact those beetles have on your yard this summer. Easy to use, apply with a commercial spreader, or irrigate it right into the soil. Specifically created to target grubs and beetle invaders without harming the beneficial insects such as bees, butterflies, and ladybugs.
Right, and to be honest, it's the only non-chemical that works. You can find out more at phyllumbioproducts.com. That's PHYLLOM bioproducts.com. phyllumbioproducts.com.
And when we come back, hang out with us. Author and Garden Talk radio host Doug Oster will be with us. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Chapin has the tools for planting your garden and keeping it growing all season long. Whether your garden is big or small, Chapin has sprayers and spreaders for fertilizing, weed, and pest control, watering, and seeding. You can find Chapin products at your local hardware store, big box retailer. You may visit them also online at chapinmfg.com to learn more and buy online. Happy Leaf LED grow lights are USA made in small batches for outstanding performance and long-run cost effectiveness. 5-year warranty and VIP customer service. Grow happy at happyleafled.com. Use coupon code JOEYHOLLY to get 10% off any order over $90 at happyleafled.com. Blue Ribbon Organics, providing locally made organic compost and soil blends for gardeners, farms, landscaping, and more. To find our products nearest you, visit blueribbonorganics.com. We know that you appreciate the value of a beautifully landscaped yard, but tackling such a project yourself can seem way too complicated, right? Bloomin' Easy plants are the answer. Their plants are low maintenance and offer exceptional beauty and color for your yard. Plus, they offer free seasonal care reminders with simple how-to videos tailored to the plants that you choose. With Bloomin' Easy on your side, creating the yard that you've always wanted becomes as easy as plant, water, and relax. Check them out at your local garden center or by visiting bloomineasyplants.com.
Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online. Goodbye biting bugs and plant invaders. No More Bugs by Naturally Green Products is your answer. A product pioneered by the USDA in 14 years in business, No More Bugs has been a favorite by consumers across the country. More than a repellent, it is safe for you, your plants, pets, and home. Visit nomorebugs.net. Free shipping on orders over $50. Use code FREESHIP4ME. Make watering easy. DripWorks provides quality drip irrigation supplies and equipment to gardeners just like you for all your growing needs across the U.S. and Canada. Purchase online at dripworks.com.
Listen, at Furlough Mattress, saving a lot on a comfortable mattress with a lifetime comfort guarantee is easy. Why? Well, because we make our mattresses right at the store. Yeah, we cut out the middleman and voila, you got it. We pass the savings directly onto you every day. So hurry in today to your local Furlough, where there are no middleman markups. Wake up, sleep better, and save at Furlough.
The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Chapin Manufacturing Incorporated, Aqua-Mart, Soil Savvy, Wind River Chimes, Wisconsin Greenhouse Company, Pro Plugger, Deer Defeat, Dripping Springs Oyas, Phylum Bioproducts. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Moments away, author and radio host Doug Oster. But first, a message from Rise Gardens.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even over 1,000 miles before it hits your plate, harvest the veggies, herbs, and greens you need for dinner tonight in the comfort of your home. No green thumb required, knowledge. Gardening made easy with the Rise Gardens app. Step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf and comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information and get your Rise Garden, visit risegardens.com.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Doug Oster is the Pittsburgh garden guru. He's also an Emmy Award-winning producer, television host, and writer. He's the host of the Organic Gardeners radio show and an avid backyard gardener residing in Pittsburgh. Welcome to the program, Doug.
Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
We are doing well. We're excited that spring may be getting closer than it was, and we keep getting these potential snowfalls, but it's not going to last very long, so we're looking forward to it, as I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, I think we might be done with the snow, but we'll see. You never know.
We've had it up to in early May before, so
just hush.
So we talk about the importance of organic gardening. You were not always an organic gardener until you had an aha moment in the garden with your son. What was that moment, and how did that transition your thinking to organic gardening?
How do you remember that story? That's what I want to know. So my son, who's now 35, when he was a toddler, I had cabbage worms really bad. Again, I was gardening like my parents and grandparents had gardened. I didn't know any better, and I had called a friend, and I said, what do I do about cabbage worms? And he said, just go down to the hardware store, get this stuff called 7 and sprinkle it on. And I did that, and it killed those cabbage worms right away, and I was, overjoyed. But when I looked into the garden, I saw my young son walking barefoot through that stuff, searching for snow peas. That was my epiphany, and I was like, that can't be right. But I thought, well, how bad can this stuff be? I mean, I got it at the hardware store, and I started looking at the back of the package, and I was like, this is a nerve toxin, From that moment on, I just decided I was going to do it differently, and I had heard of something like newfangled called organic gardening, and at the time, there was no internet, and I told this story the other day at our local home and garden show, and when I said that there was no internet, a kid that was sitting in the audience actually gasped. And so I went to the library, read everything I could on organic gardening, and I found out it wasn't newfangled at all. In fact, everybody was an organic gardener before World War II because there were no chemical pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. And that really bolstered my confidence because I was afraid that when I stopped using these chemicals that I would be overrun with pests and diseases, but it didn't work out that way. And I learned a different way to garden. When I applied that broad-spectrum pesticide on there, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I killed the bad bug, but at the time I didn't know to look at a bigger picture where I was killing all the good bugs and I was killing my soil life down below. And so that epiphany changed everything for me. And since that day, I've never used chemicals in the garden. And to tell you the truth, my garden kind of takes care of itself because I'm always working hard on the soil. And so I don't have that many problems. I don't even use many organic products in the garden except maybe sometimes a biological fungicide, and that's rare.
Now, for people who may go down that road of organic gardening, but they see an infestation of a bad bug, let's say aphids or whiteflies, what would you suggest to get that back in check to where the nature can control it at that point, or what do you do?
Well, the number one thing in my organic system is compost and organic matter. Always, whenever I'm planting anything, I'm adding organic matter in the form of compost that I make, or it could be compost by the bag. It could be compost by the truckload. Here around the Pittsburgh area, they give away compost that the municipalities make out of our leaves, and it's great stuff. So by doing that, the first step is by improving that soil, the plants are getting everything they need from the compost. All I want to do is I want to dig my planting hole. I want to improve it with as much compost as I can, put the plant in, mulch it, water it, and let it do its thing. After that, we'll always have problems in the garden. And I answer questions all day long about especially aphids. When I see an infestation of aphids, that plant isn't happy. And so that's the first thing. But then for dealing with whatever the pest is, we specifically target that pest in a way that we're not going to disrupt the whole cycle of nature like I did when I threw that 7 down. And so there's specific things. So aphids, first thing, you blow them off the plant with a hose. It's really hard for them to get back up. If you have a real infestation, horticultural oil, insecticidal soap, things that are safe for us, safe for our families, and safe for people that live downstream. Same thing with the whiteflies. My tomatoes at the end of the season, when they get crowded, sometimes you'll start to see some whiteflies at the end of the season. No big deal. If it's early in the season, again, same sort of thing. Horticultural oil, insecticidal soap, but it's not just one application. You got to get it on the insect itself, which means under the leaves. And when we take these different steps, whatever they might be, whether it's a sucking insect like an aphid or a chewing insect like a Japanese beetle, when we take an action that is specifically targeted at them, we'll allow the good bugs to do what they do. And again, not using chemicals in the garden, the birds are eating things and it's not hurting them. The pollinators are happy and they are helping you garden. And so by doing this, we're just letting the good bugs and nature take its course and help us garden. That's the idea.
So kind of springing off the natural gardening, natural way of gardening, our listeners know that we encourage minimal soil disturbance and we don't till. You follow that same practice. What are your reasons for not tilling, and why do you encourage your listeners yourself not to till?
Well, it came from a book called Teaming with Microbes by Jeff Lowenfels. That was, again, another epiphany where, the theory being that this whole symbiotic network under the ground gets all torn up when you till, and it takes all season to come back together. And I was very suspect of this. I had been a tiller my whole gardening career. When you're taught to do something a certain way and you see how good a garden can be, you keep doing it. But I converted half my veggie garden to no-till, and in one season, the next season, it was like, this is the way I'm doing it. I like doing it this way. I'm not sure if it's any easier because, again, every time at the end of the season, I'm putting a couple inches of compost on. Then again in the spring, so I'm spending a lot of time, from where my driveway is to where my garden is about 800 yards. So it's a long run with that wheelbarrow. And I also, I encourage people to not to till, but I also tell them you don't have to feel bad if that's what you want to do. I always say that there's 100 different ways to do every gardening job, and if it works for you, then it's right. I don't want to be on a soapbox, and say this is the only way to do it. I find it a very wonderful and a great way to grow, and for me, it's the right thing. And I encourage people to no-till, but there's some people that just are never going to make that transition, and I don't want to make them feel guilty about that.
Right. What are your top 3 tips for people to save space in an urban setting? I know many of your listeners on your radio show and ours are in urban and very tight confinements. What do you suggest to maximize what they have available?
Well, the first thing would be what people have been telling me for 50 years. Grow up. And that means grow vertically. And I do a lot of that. Even though this is interesting how this would work both for small spaces, but I'm on 4 acres. I'm 7 miles north of Pittsburgh, and I'm on 4 acres, mostly wooded, with a 30 by 40 vegetable garden. I want to grow more stuff. And I think anybody does, no matter what kind of garden they're at. And that vertical growing really makes a big difference. When you take those vine crops or whatever it is, that anything that can climb, and move it up as opposed to letting it ramble. Secondly, of course, containers. But whenever I talk containers with people, I always say bigger is better. Containers, when you're in April, May, and you're getting lots of rain, you're thinking, boy, this was a great idea to have containers. In July, you're thinking, this was an awful idea to have containers,
right?
Because I've got to be out there watering every day. More mass means less watering. And so, depending on your space, the bigger container you can use, in my opinion, is going to be better for you. And then also looking for varieties that don't go crazy and grow huge. In the case of if you're growing tomatoes, you have a very small space and you want to do them in containers, you need the big container because tomatoes, if they dry out, we all know this, they get blossom end rot. So we got to keep water on them. But something like a super bush that gives you a decent-sized tomato but doesn't have the vines that will get, 8 feet tall eventually. I think those 3 things for me for urban gardens. And then actually, can I go to a 4th thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Use your imagination in your space and look at it carefully and think, that wall would actually be a great place to put my peppers next to because the sun hits that wall and heats it up. And I could put an actual kind of a big raised bed right behind there, and I could put a little thing on the side where I could sit, and I'd have 6 pepper plants in there, and they would go nuts there. So just use your imagination. And that's one of the things about gardening. It's supposed to be fun, and if it's not fun, you really have to look at it and say, do I need to scale back? Do I need to grow different things? I think we've all been through this where I certainly have, where I've bitten off more than I can chew. And I've had to, in my landscape, I've had to let things go back to to the woods. Let the woods take it over, and everything does what it can. And I'm so much happier because I've figured out my comfort zone where I can take care of this. And as I get older, I can do less and less, and I keep adding more and more benches to get from one place to the next in the garden. So I sit here for a little bit, and actually, as I get older, I spend more time thinking about what I want to do in the garden. I sit in those benches, and I watch the chipmunks do their thing, or I listen to the fountain, and I ponder, much longer than I used to. When I was younger, I was just, let's go do it. Let's get to work, and we're going to make a new bed and this and that. I think about it more carefully, and I really do enjoy my time just sitting in the garden.
Fantastic. So we are often learning from our followers and listeners. What is something that you've learned maybe recently or just along the way that really stuck out to you? Maybe something you felt, this listener just told me about this, but I should have already known this, or just a random tip.
That's a good question. I guess for me, first off, many times it's varieties, whether it's a red envy daffodil, I'm a daffodil fanatic, or a different type of tomato. But I think the technique that I use the most now, that I learned from somebody I bumped into at the Home and Garden Show, is horizontal planting of tomatoes, something I never would have thought of. Again, you kind of get blinders on sometimes. I was taught to plant tomatoes a certain way. And when I learned the horizontal planting technique, where you have a decent-sized plant, you're stripping off the bottom leaves, you're just making a shallow trench, and you're just leaving the top of the plant as is and gently putting into that little spot there and covering it with compost and mulch. And you have to know where your stake's going in, because if you pound that stake right through the stem, that's not going to be a good thing. But I find that having that stem in that little trench, that all becomes roots. And it's close to the heat, which it wants, and it's close to water. And when someone explains that to you, it's eye-opening. It's like, wow, that maybe I should have known that, but I never would have thought of that. And I use that technique a lot, especially I've got a little unheated greenhouse, and I'm in the woods. So the unheated greenhouse is like full sun right now, 80 degrees out there no matter what with the sun's out. But when those trees start to leaf out, my tomatoes start to get leggy, and that makes them perfect candidates for horizontal planting. And when you do that horizontal planting, you won't believe what your tomato will do, especially early on, because let's say you had that long stem and you went all the way down in the ground. It's so much cooler down there, it's not going to work in the same way. Eventually those roots will form and everything, and you'll get a big plant. But when you put it that horizontal way, like I said, it's close to the warmth, close to any water or liquid fertilizer you'd put on, and they just go nuts that way. So that was a great one. But I learn from people that I meet gardening every day. You learn something from them. For me, I really encourage people. I love to hear their stories about how they were brought into the world of gardening, and what, we're in daffodil season here right now, and so we talk a lot about daffodils, and so many people have these memories of daffodils, that harken back to people that they know or people that they knew. And that's the part of gardening and interacting with these people that I love the most, is hearing about how they're moved by these plants, and how these plants bring back so many memories.
Well, Doug, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered to Holly and myself and all of our listeners, and the knowledge you shared with us. How can our listeners find out more about you and the books that you have written?
Everything's at DougOster.com. It's very easy to find, and I answer garden questions all day long. I consider that my job. So if you have a question, you just hit that contact button. And if you don't get an answer, that means I didn't see it. Don't be afraid to send that contact or that email again, because I love that part of it. I love doing that. I love trying to help people in any way I can. And like we all do, we all learn from these people, too, when they contact us.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. It was so much fun to talk to you guys again. And I love the Instagram feed.
Thank you. Thank you. And when we come back, it's going to be your garden questions, our garden answers. You are tuned in to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Have a garden question? Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now 1-800-927-SHOW.
Dripping Springs Oyas clay pot irrigation solves the watering needs for gardens, bushes, new trees, and more. An ancient irrigation system we brought to America. Dripping Springs Oyas, OLLAS, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Check us out.
Mantis tillers, the premium long-lasting gas-powered tillers, are the perfect solution for any garden. This Mantis machine is available with 2 or 4 cycle engines with a 19-inch or 16-inch tilling width. Your DIY companion in your garden and your lawn converts easily for edging, aerating, and more with optional attachments. Find details at mantis.com. Deer Defeat is an all-natural based animal repellent to keep deer and rabbits away from your valuable plants that is odorless after 30 minutes and dries clear. It creates a continuous, invisible shield to protect your plants. Works for 30 days through rain, snow, and freeze. Will not clog your sprayer. Apply to your property without environmental damage. You can spray directly onto your plants up to flowering, then apply around your plants to continue protection. No need to reapply. Money back guarantee. To purchase, go to deerdefeat.com and use coupon code RADIO to save 10% off your order. Head into Fleet Farm where you'll find everything you need. From tires to tree stands, drills to dog food, toys to tools, they've got it all. You can save even more at Fleet Farm when you join the Fleet Rewards loyalty program. You get exclusive offers and it's free to sign up. Get everything you need at a low fleet price. Shop in store or online today at Fleet Farm. Garden like a pro in 3 easy steps and receive customized fertilizer recommendations for your garden or lawn. Soil Savvy helps you determine what nutrients your plants need to thrive. Never again over-apply nutrients they don't need. A patented process that makes you a smart gardener. To get your soil test kit, go to mysoilsavvy.com. Aqua-mart.com has everything you need for eye-pleasing outdoor water features on your property. For over 25 years, we've been creating and field testing beautiful water features in order to provide you with the most reliable products and best value in the industry. From easy-to-install pond and water-filled kits to pumps, fish food, and more, you'll find everything you need to install and maintain a naturally balanced water feature in your yard. Make your backyard a true oasis and maintain it well. Visit aqua-mart.com to shop for all your needs.
Spring, the season of renewal, an unexpected house guest, none the worse perhaps than ants. And I'm not talking about great Aunt Mabel. When you need to get rid of ants fast, you need Rescue Ant Baits. Rescue Ant Baits are pre-baited, child-resistant, and ready to use right out of the box. No sticky liquid, no mess. Made in the USA by the makers of the popular Rescue Fly and Yellow Jacket traps. Learn more at rescue.com. That's rescue.com. The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Happy Leaf LED, Root Maker, Jung Seeds, Tree Hugger Sprinklers, Verlo Mattresses, Farmer's Defense, Pomona Universal Pectin, Natural Green Products, Mantis Tillers. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy that you are with us today. It's time for our Your Questions Are Answered. You got a question, you can send it on over to gardentalkradio@gmail.com and we will get an answer to your question at gardentalkradio@gmail.com, or you can give us a call toll free coast to coast at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469.
This question is sponsored by Fleet Farm and fleetfarm.com. I have a hard time growing pumpkins. Do you have any tips, advice?
Well, if you want a long season, if you're in the northern portions of the United States, it can be a little more of a challenge. Most of the pumpkins in which we purchase typically come from Illinois and Indiana in the southern areas. Or in those states in general. Full sun, long season, warm area of the garden, lots of enriched soil, and consistent watering and mulch will help build the plant in order to produce. Once your pumpkin plant is producing flowers and starts to bear fruit, or the pumpkins, you want to remove all but about 2, maybe 3 pumpkin on the whole plant. It may produce 6 or 7 or 8, but it's not going to be able to mature them. You want to cut and physically remove those until you have about 2 or 3 on the plant so it can focus all of its energy on those fruit, and you can have nice pumpkins. All right, Holly, my tomato seedlings are turning yellow. What can I do?
So if your tomato seedlings are turning yellow, it typically means that there is a lack of nitrogen, and this is a sign of that. It's the most common cause. People generally don't fertilize tomatoes enough. When plants are in the ground, every 2 weeks is good for fertilizing. If they're in a small container, a little
Party cup
type size,
4-inch.
yeah, then you need to do that about weekly.
Yes, and follow the recommendations. We would recommend like a compost tea or an organic fertilizer so that you're not using a chemical fertilizer to where the plants will become dependent on it. Once you get them out in the ground, you'll be fine. We start ours with a generic potting mix that has a slow release fertilizer and water retention mechanisms in it to feed the plant, and we've not necessarily that I can recall had any dramatic issues with plants discoloring. So it also may be the material in which you're starting them in as well. Just like anything, you get what you pay for. The cheaper the compost, the cheaper the potting soil, the less quality that it can deliver for your plants, and your plants will suffer for that. You tell the story, Holly, about the $1 potting soil that you got at the drugstore.
Oh yeah, that was not a smart decision. So I don't know, late one evening, or not that late, but I stopped at the drugstore to pick something up. And
you shouldn't buy potting soil at the drugstore. Lesson number 1, but go ahead.
You should just take the potting soil. Don't do that. But I was gonna say you could take it from the grassy area outside the drugstore. It's probably gonna be better for you, but don't do that. So I was at this drugstore and I was looking at stuff, and I walked into the little seasonal area, and there was this coupon, and it was like, you can buy these bags. I think it was 1 cubic foot of soil for $1. And I called Joey and I said, should I get some of these? And you were like, yeah, is there a limit? And I don't remember if there was a limit, but we got a bunch and we grew in it. And well, we didn't really grow in it. We tried to. It was sad.
Sand holds more moisture than what that material did.
Like, so. I don't even, like, what was it? We don't even know.
It was bad.
It was bad.
Okay, what do I do with my long sprouted potatoes? It's still too cold to plant them. Well, you can keep them in a somewhat ambient light area. You don't want to choke them off from light, because then you're going to get really long, stringly sprouts or leggy sprouts on them. So you want to do that. You want to keep them in a 45 to 55 degree area to keep them chilled, not let them warm up too much. And then when it's time to plant in your area, preferably 50 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent at root zone, you want to bury that stem as deep as you can. You don't want to break it off. By breaking it off, you're going to put the plant or the tuber in a recycling or a restart mechanism to where it's now going to have to regenerate more growth to create a new growth tip. So by doing that, you're depleting the energy, and if the potato is small enough, it's not going to have the energy to do that. So you just want to plant it deep, much like you would plant a leggy tomato. Stretch that out and lay it in and bury it, but be gentle, and it will be just fine. Once it does what it needs to do in the ground and begin to form roots, it will detach itself from the tuber. That's when you dig the potatoes up and you see this rotten one. Oh, we got a rotten one. That is the actual seed potato, and you'll be just fine. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to, be cautious of when you start to chit these potatoes to get them to sprout. That also has a key into making sure they're not too leggy or long sprouted. All right. Sweet pepper plants I have started, and I look under the leaves, and it looks like there is a salty residue on the backside of the leaves. What is this, and how do I fix it?
It's from overwatering.
Uh-huh.
So what happens is that the leaves dry up, and then they eventually they will fall off, and the plant will recover but it's just from too much watering.
Too much watering. Okay. Well, with that, we are out of time, and we thank you for yours. Did you miss any portion of the program today or would like to revisit it? You can certainly do that by going to our parent website, which is the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and clicking on the Season 7 tab at the top of the page. Or you can send us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and we will send you a link to the program. Tune in next week to the program where we'll be discussing cool season vegetables that you can grow in your garden, as well as mistakes to avoid when in your garden. Our guest is author Kathy Jintz, and we'll answer more of your garden questions. So until next week, for
Holly Baird,
I'm Joy Baird, and we will see you in the garden.